You stand in a narrow corridor deep within the Forbidden City, the pulsing heart of the Qing dynasty in 1720. The walls, cloaked in imperial yellow, shimmer faintly under the wavering glow of oil lamps, their color a testament to the emperor's divine mandate. The air is thick with the fragrance of jasmine incense, yet beneath your silk slippers glide silently across the polished stone floor as you trail an elderly eunuch, his robes whispering with each measured step, his shadow flickering in the candlelight. You are only 15, a girl torn from your family, chosen for your delicate features and graceful poise to serve as one of the Kangji Emperor's newest concubines. Your heart hammers. You were told that entering the harem was an honor, a chance to bask in imperial splendor. But the truth is far more intricate. The Qing harem is not merely a collection of women but a meticulously engineered system, designed to serve the emperor's desires while reinforcing his unchallenged power. In 1720, the Qing dynasty, the eunuch halts abruptly. Your breath catches, the words slicing through the illusion of grandeur. The stories of golden roofs, jade ornaments, and feasts of 100 dishes dissolve into a mirage. The real rules of the harem, about to unfold, are stranger and more terrifying than anything you could have conjured. To grasp these rules, you must understand the world you've entered. The Qing harem, as documented in historical texts like the Qing Shigao, was a political arena as much as a private one, where women were both pawns and subtle players in the game of imperial power. Your selection was no whim. It followed a grueling process where girls, often Manchu or elite Han Chinese, were inspected for beauty, health, and family loyalty. Your family, perhaps minor nobility from a distant province, likely rejoiced at your selection, seeing it as a ladder to social ascent. But you, trembling in your intricately embroidered robes, feel the truth. The harem is a gilded cage, where survival hinges on mastering rules that erode your very historical records. Note his obsession with control, born of a dynasty that rose through conquest and faced constant threats of rebellion. A concubine's misstep could be construed as disloyalty, punishable by exile or death. As you follow the eunuch deeper into the palace, the faint strains of a guqin drip. The harem's rules, unwritten but absolute, are whispered from one generation to the next, a secret code of survival rooted in the Qing. Now, standing in this corridor, you recall the tearful farewell to your mother, her hands clutching yours, whispering prayers for your safety. As the eunuch's shadow, you are not yet aware of the full scope of the harem's demands. But a quiet spark within you, a flicker of defiance, whispers that you will endure. You must. For now, you listen, your eyes fixed on the eunuch's back, as he prepares to unveil the first of the invisible chains that will bind your life. The eunuch's voice, low and deliberate, the words settle over you like a heavy cloak, their simplicity belying the profound discipline they demand. In the flickering candlelight of the Forbidden City, you begin to grasp what this means. When the Son of Heaven enters his chambers, you must maneuver with uncanny precision. Always, the concubines before you, the eunuch explains, have honed an almost supernatural ability to glide sideways, to pivot and sway like dancers in a silent ballet, their spines never once aligned against the man who holds their lives in his hands. This rule is not merely about etiquette, it is rooted in the paranoid heart of absolute power. The Kangxi Emperor, ruling over 300 million subjects, a concealed needle, a hidden blade, poison tucked beneath a fingernail. These are the specters that haunt the dreams of the most powerful man in the Qing Empire. Your back, turned even for a moment, represents. When she reaches for an object behind her, she turns in a graceful arc, her eyes locked on the emperor's face. When she disrobes, her garments fall away in a choreographed cascade, each motion a testament to her survival, her body in a state of perpetual genuflection. The origins of this rule lie deep in the Qing dynasty's history of conquest and consolidation. The Manchu rulers, having seized the throne from the Ming in 1644, faced constant rebellions and plots, including from within the palace. A notorious incident in 1661, during the a turned back could hide a weapon, a glance, a signal to an unseen conspirator. Thus, the rule became a physical manifestation of the emperor's need for control, transforming the concubines' bodies into extensions of his vigilance. To master this rule, you study the movements of women like Meilin, whose grace masks a relentless calculation. You practice in the dim hours before dawn, when the palace sleeps, learning to pivot on the balls of your feet, to angle your body without breaking eye contact. The effort is exhausting, your muscles aching from the unnatural precision, but the alternative is unthinkable. Historical accounts note that concubines who faltered whether through clumsiness or defiance faced punishments ranging from demotion to exile in the cold palaces, distant wings of the Forbidden City, where forgotten women lived out their days in obscurity. One such story, recorded in palace annals, tells of a concubine named Her fate serves as a silent warning, etched into the collective memory of the harem. Yet, there is more to this rule than fear of punishment. It is a constant reminder of your place, a physical enactment of submission. The emperor, revered as the Son of Heaven, is not just a man but a symbol of divine order, his body a conduit for the mandate of heaven. To turn your back is to disrupt this cultural belief, rooted in Confucian principles of hierarchy and filial piety, permeates the Qing court, where every gesture reinforces the emperor's supremacy. You learn to suppress the instinct to turn away, to shield yourself from scrutiny, instead training your body to embody devotion, your eyes fixed forward even as your heart yearns for freedom. The rule reshapes your physicality, forcing you to inhabit your body as an instrument of the emperor's will. You recall a moment from your childhood, spinning freely in your family's courtyard, your laughter echoing without consequence. That freedom is gone, replaced by a hyper-awareness of your every motion. The other concubines, you notice, carry this rule in their posture, their shoulders perpetually squared toward Some, like Malin, seem to have internalized it so fully that their grace appears beyond the corridor. The Forbidden City hums with the weight of its own history, its walls bearing witness to centuries of women who have navigated these invisible chains. The rule of as the candlelight flickers, casting long shadows across the yellow walls, you steel yourself for the next rule, knowing that each one will bind you tighter to this world of beauty and dread. The eunuch's eyes narrow as he leans closer, his voice a hushed rasp in the corridor's stillness. The second rule of the imperial you are a vessel, an object crafted for the Son of Heaven's pleasure, your individuality erased by the grammar of submission. The rule is not just protocol. It is a deliberate rewiring of your mind, forcing you to think of yourself as less than human, a shadow defined by his will. In the Qing dynasty's Forbidden City of 1720, this linguistic erasure is the Kangxi emperor, steeped in Confucian ideals of hierarchy, demands absolute deference, and the harem's rules reflect this. Historical records, such as the Qing Shigao, describe how concubines were trained to suppress their personal voice, their words molded to reinforce the emperor's divinity. To speak as within months, the eunuch warns, but in the quiet moments, when you share a rare conversation in the concubine's quarters, you notice her hesitation, as if she struggles to recall who she was before. Once, she told you of her childhood in Shandong, weaving silk with her sisters. Modern scholars of trauma might recognize this as a form of enforced dissociation. The veritable records of the Qing hint at this dynamic, noting how concubines were trained to embody roles rather than personalities, their speech a performance of erasure that extended beyond the emperor's presence. To deepen the emotional weight of this rule, consider Mei. She dreamed of painting, her fingers stained with ink as she sketched birds in. Her struggle is a quiet tragedy, a reminder that the harem's rules do not just govern speech but reshape the soul. The cultural roots of this rule lie in Confucian principles, which permeate the Qing court. Confucianism emphasizes hierarchy and duty, with the emperor as the pinnacle of moral and cosmic order. To speak as an equal, even in thought, is to challenge this order, a subversion unthinkable in a palace where every word is scrutinized. Historical accounts describe how concubines were coached by senior women or eunuchs, their speech drilled until self-referential pronouns vanished. Failure to comply could lead to severe consequences. A concubine who spoke out of turn risked demotion or worse, as seen in the case of a low-ranking consort in 1718, recorded in palace annals, who was exiled for addressing the emperor as I during a moment of distress. As you practice this rule, your tongue feels heavy, each utterance of this unworthy slave, a surrender of the girl you were. You recall your mother's voice, calling your name with pride. Others, newer like you, stumble, their sentences halting as they force themselves into the third person, their identities fraying with each forced phrase. The eunuch's gaze lingers as he watches you rehearse, your voice trembling as you practice the prescribed phrases. Beyond the corridor, the Forbidden City hums with its own rhythm, the distant clink of porcelain and the soft rustle of silk a reminder of the world you now inhabit. The rule of erasing the self is a chain that binds not just your words but your very being, pulling you deeper into a system where survival means surrendering The eunuch's voice drops lower still, a whisper that seems to merge with the shadows of the Forbidden City's corridor. The third rule of the imperial harem pierces the air. You must never look directly into the emperor's eyes during intimacy. Your gaze must remain fixed. This is not about respect, the eunuch explains, but about control, preventing the emperor from glimpsing your soul and, more critically, preventing you from seeing his. Eye contact fosters intimacy, and intimacy breeds complications. The emperor must use your body without confronting your humanity, without glimpsing the fear, pain, or longing. And if you see into his eyes, to meet his gaze is to risk seeing his vulnerabilities, his doubts, his fears, his human frailties, and for him to see yours, you learn to train your eyes downward, focusing on the intricate embroidery of the emperor's robes or the jade pendant at his throat, anything to avoid the dangerous pull of his gaze. You observe Chunhua, a concubine of 4 years, whose eyes never waver from that precise point below the emperor's chin, even as her hands tremble slightly. Her face is a mask of serene submission, but in the quiet of the concubine's quarters, you've seen her stare blankly at the garden koi, as if searching for the self she's buried. The rule demands not just physical discipline but a mental severing, a refusal to connect, leaving you to navigate intimacy as a hollow performance. To deepen the emotional weight, Yan, hailing from a scholarly family in Hangzhou, entered the harem with dreams of poetry and a heart full of hope. One night, overwhelmed by the emperor's unexpected gentleness, her eyes lifted instinctively, meeting his for her punishment was not death but exile to the eunuch's court. The cultural roots of this rule lie in modern psychology might liken this to the exercise feels unnatural, your eyes straining to resist their instinct to connect. Other concubines, you notice, carry this rule in their downcast eyes, their gazes skimming the floor or fixing on neutral points the edge of a screen, the curve of a vase as if afraid to see too much. Some, like Chunhua, have perfected. He knows the stakes. Historical accounts suggest that eunuchs, themselves bound by the harem's rules, often bore the burden of enforcing them, their own survival tied to the concubine's compliance. Beyond the corridor, the Forbidden City pulses with its own rhythm, the distant chime of a bronze bell marking the hour, a reminder of the rule of the forbidden gaze is a chain that binds not just your eyes but your heart. The eunuch's voice, now a steady murmur in the to cry out spontaneously, whether in ecstasy or agony, is to acknowledge an independent physical response. The emperor, meanwhile, grows addicted to the power of commanding response, sometimes spending an entire night testing a concubine's silence, not through pleasure but through pain, endurance, or the sheer assertion of his will over her autonomy. In the Qing dynasty's harem of 1,720, this rule is the Qing Shi Gao and other historical records describe the harem as a space where every act was choreographed to reinforce the emperor's divine status. Silence during intimacy ensured that the concubine's body remained a passive instrument, devoid of agency. The Kangxi emperor, a ruler known for some women, the eunuch warns, break under this pressure, developing a condition the palace physicians cannot name, a complete inability to make any sound, even in solitude, their voices stolen by the impossible demands of imperial desire. You observe this rule's toll in the concubine Jingyi, whose silent grace in the emperor's chambers is both mesmerizing and haunting. Her lips remain sealed, her breath yet, in the concubine's quarters, you've seen her press her hands to her throat, as if coaxing a sound that refuses to come. Historical accounts suggest that such silence was not merely enforced but internalized. Palace records from the early 18th century note cases of concubines who, modern psychology might label this as a form of traumatic mutism, a coping mechanism for enduring relentless control. But in the Forbidden City, it was simply survival. To deepen the emotional resonance, consider the fictional story of Lian, a concubine from a fishing village in Fujian, whose voice once carried songs across the sea. Selected for her luminous beauty, Lian entered the harem with during her first night with the emperor, a gasp escaped her lips. In the quiet of her chamber, any sound from a concubine, whether of pleasure or distress, disrupted this ritual, suggesting a body with its own will, a dangerous notion in a court where the emperor's authority was absolute. Historical parallels exist in other imperial systems. For instance, in the Ottoman harem, silence was similarly enforced. In the Qing court, This rule was compounded by the emperor's ability to manipulate silence, commanding sounds only to test a concubine's obedience, turning her body into a battleground for his power. As you train for this rule, you practice in the dim light of your chamber, pressing your lips together until they ache, teaching your body now that freedom is a liability, each sound a potential betrayal. The other concubines, you notice, carry this rule in their taut expressions, their breaths measured even in casual conversation, as if silence has become their default state. Some others, newer like you. One such case, from 1719, describes a concubine who cried out during a moment of weakness and was sent to serve in the laundry, her voice silenced permanently by shame. Beyond the corridor, the forbidden city hums with the clink of jade and the rustle of silk, a deceptive calm that masks the harem's relentless. As the candlelight flickers, casting ghostly shadows on the imperial yellow walls, you brace for the next rule, each one tightening the grip of this gilded cage. The eunuch's voice, now a grave whisper in the flickering corridor of the forbidden city, reveals the sixth rule of the imperial harem. Once the emperor has finished, you must remain in position, usually prostrate, until he grants. This can last minutes or hours, depending on his mood, but during this time, you are forbidden to clean. This rule, the eunuch explains, is not about intimacy but about the Kangxi emperor, a ruler obsessed with order, saw such rules as extensions of Confucian hierarchy, where the concubine's body was a tool to reinforce his supremacy. To move without permission was to assert agency. Palace annals. In the concubine's quarters, you've seen her rub her knees, bruised from hours of kneeling, her eyes distant as she massages life back into her limbs. Historical accounts suggest such physical tolls were common. A 1714 record describes a concubine who developed chronic joint pain from prolonged immobility, her condition ignored by palace physicians unless it interfered with her duties. Modern medical perspectives might recognize this as a form of physical trauma, the body bearing the cost of enforced stillness. But in the harem, it was simply part of survival. To deepen the emotional weight, consider the fictional story of Shu, a concubine from a merchant family in Yangzhou. Shu entered the harem with dreams of elevating her family's status, her laughter once a melody. Now, she endures the sixth rule with a quiet resolve. Her story mirrors the silent suffering of countless women, their bodies reduced to symbols of submission. The cultural roots of this rule lie in the Qing dynasty's obsession with ritual and hierarchy. Confucian texts, such as the Book of Rites, emphasize the importance of physical deference to superior. The emperor's ability to move freely while the concubine remained static was a visual enactment of power, a reminder that her body existed for his use alone. Historical parallels exist in other imperial systems. For instance, in the Ming dynasty, consorts were similarly required to maintain submissive postures post-intimacy. As noted in the Qing harem, failure to comply could lead to severe consequences, demotion, flogging, or exile to the cold palaces, where forgotten women lived in obscurity. A 1718 record tells of a concubine banished for a just. You recall a childhood memory of lying in the grass, watching clouds drift, your body free to shift and stretch. Now, that freedom is a distant dream, replaced by a discipline that demands you ignore your body's protests. The other concubines, you notice, some, like Fen, seem to have mastered it, their stillness almost ethereal, but their eyes betray a quiet exhaustion, as if each moment of immobility chips away at their spirit. The eunuch observes your practice, his gaze sharp. Beyond the corridor, the forbidden city hums with the clink of jade and the rustle of silk, a deceptive calm that masks the harem's relentless demands. The rule of the aftermath is a chain that binds not just your body but your dignity. The eunuch's voice, a grave. You become hypervigilant about your cycles, appetite, and energy levels, developing elaborate systems to track your physicality. The lucky ones learn to read their bodies accurately. The unlucky ones guess wrong, bearing the consequences on their skin. Most insidiously, confirmed pregnancies lead to isolation and surveillance, not protection, as you are monitored to ensure you neither terminate the pregnancy nor harm your. Historical records, such as the Qing Shigao, detail the meticulous oversight of pregnancies in the harem, with eunuchs and palace physicians tasked with ensuring the birth of potential heirs. The Kangxi emperor, whose reign depended on a failure to comply whether through concealment or false reporting could lead to execution or severe punishment, as the emperor's divine mandate hinged on the purity and control of his lineage. You observe this rule's toll in the concubine Jingyi, whose delicate frame belies the once. To deepen the emotional resonance, consider the fictional story of Lian, a concubine from a fishing village in Fujian. Lian entered the harem with dreams of elevating her family, her laughter once echoing across the sea. Now, she lives in fear of her own body, tracking the eunuch's voice, a steady murmur in the shadowed corridor of the Forbidden City, unveils the 8th rule of the imperial harem. When multiple concubines are summoned to the emperor's chamber, this rule, the eunuch explains, is the bonds of friendship, which could offer solace, are systematically corrupted, turning potential allies into instruments of each other's degradation. The Kangxi emperor, a master of control, used such dynamics to maintain his dominance, ensuring that no group of women could coalesce into a threat. Palace annals note that multiple concubines were often summoned together during grand feasts or rituals, their interactions choreographed to reinforce hierarchy. The favored concubine, often of higher rank like a gife or pin, led the encounter, while others were assigned roles that humiliated or marginalized. In the emperor's chambers, she leads with practiced grace, her movements commanding attention, while others, like the younger Malin, are relegated to secondary roles, their eyes flickering with envy. In the concubine's quarters, you've seen Eugène avoid Malin's gaze, their once warm. Historical accounts confirm this. To deepen the emotional resonance, consider the fictional story of Hui, a concubine from a Manchu banner family. Hui entered the harem with a sisterly bond to another concubine, Lanying, forged during their training. They shared whispers of home, dreams of riding horses across the steppe, but the 8th rule shattered their connection. Summoned together to the emperor's chambers, Hui was forced to watch Lanying perform, her role reduced to silent observer, her heart twisting with shame and jealousy. Later, Lanying's favor earned her a jade hairpin, while Hui received nothing, the gift a wedge between them. In private, Hui tried to mend their bond, but Lanying's curt replies cut their friendship, once a refuge. By pitting concubines against each other, the system ensured loyalty to the emperor alone, as noted in historical texts like the veritable records of the Qing. Similar dynamics existed in other imperial harems. For instance, in the Ottoman Empire, concubines competed for the sultan's favor, their rivalries documented in 17th-century court chronicles. In the Qing harem, a 1719 record tells of a concubine banished. Now, that camarade, the eunuch watches your practice, his expression unreadable, his presence a reminder of the stakes. Palace records suggest eunuchs played a key role in orchestrating these encounters, their reports to the emperor shaping a concubine's fate. Beyond the corridor, the rule of weaponized jealousy is a chain that binds not just your actions but your heart, forcing you to see every woman as a threat, every friendship as a risk. As the candlelight casts trembling shadows on the imperial yellow walls, you brace for the next rule, each one tightening the eunuch's voice, a low cadence echoing through This requires an almost superhuman level of emotional intelligence and self-control, transforming you into an expert psychologist, studying every micro-expression, every shift in posture, every change in breathing pattern. The concubines, the eunuch warns, develop an intuitive understanding. In the Qing dynasty's harem of 1720. This rule reflects the intricate demands of serving the Kangxi emperor, whose moods were as volatile as they were powerful. Historical records, such as the Qingxi Gao, describe the emperor as a man of intellectual rigor, but the harem was a microcosm of the court. Palace annals note instances where concubines were demoted for misreading the emperor's disposition, their missteps recorded as disruptions to the harmony of the inner chambers. You observe this rule's toll in the concubine Liwa, whose ability to navigate the emperor's moods is almost uncanny. In his chambers, she shifts seamlessly, yet, in the concubine's quarters, modern psychology might label this as emotional dissociation, a survival tactic to endure relentless performance. But in the harem, it was a necessary sacrifice. To deepen the emotional resonance, consider the fictional story of Mei, a concubine from a scholarly family in Suzhou. One night, sensing his anger, her story echoes the silent struggles of countless women, their emotions sacrificed to the harem's demands. The cultural roots of this rule lie in the Qing dynasty's Confucian framework, which prized harmony and deference to authority. The emperor, as the son of heaven, similar expectations exist. As you train for this rule, the other concubines, palace records suggest eunuchs were tasked with reporting on concubines' emotional accuracy, their own status tied to the women's compliance. As the candle, this rule demands a split consciousness, requiring perfect recall in his presence and perfect amnesia outside it. You must maintain a mental archive of his preferences, his moods, his fleeting comments, while suppressing these memories in public, ensuring no trace of intimacy escapes to threaten the harem's delicate balance. The eunuch warns that some concubines succeed in this psychological juggling act, while others break entire. Historical records, such as the Qing Shi Gao, describe concubines as extensions of the emperor's will, their thoughts disciplined to serve his needs without compromising his authority. The Kangxi emperor, a ruler known for his intellectual rigor and paranoia, required concubines to anticipate his desires with precision, yet any public recollection of intimate moments risked exposing his vulnerabilities, a dangerous breach in a court where his divinity was paramount. Palace annals note that concubines were trained to compartmentalize their experiences, often under the guidance of senior women or eunuchs, their memories a tightly guarded secret to be accessed only in the emperor's presence. You observe this rule's toll in the concubine Rong, whose memory is as sharp as it is burdened. In the emperor's chambers, she recalled, yet, in the concubine's quarters, historical accounts suggest such mental strain was common. A 1718 record describes a concubine who, overwhelmed by this dual demand, began speaking of the emperor's habits in public, earning her exile to the cold palaces for indiscretion. Modern psychology. To deepen the emotional resonance, consider the fictional story of Jia, a concubine from a scholarly family in Hangzhou. Jia entered the harem with a mind trained in memorizing poetry, a skill she now uses to catalogue the emperor's every word. One night, exhausted, she whispered his name in her sleep, a slip that drew sharp glances from other concubines. Now, Jia lied. The emperor, as the son of heaven, was a figure of divine mystery, his private moments guarded to preserve his aura. Concubines were expected to serve as flawless mirrors of his desires. In the Qing harem, failure to comply could lead to severe consequences, demotion, isolation, or worse. A 1715 record tells of a concubine punished for mentioning the emperor's preferences to a rival, her fate a warning etched. You recall a childhood memory of reciting. Others, newer like you, falter, their eyes darting as they struggle to bury their thoughts. The eunuch watches your practice, his gaze piercing, his silence a reminder of the stakes. Palace records suggest eunuchs were tasked with monitoring concubines' discretion, their reports shaping a woman's fate. Beyond the rule of memory and amnesia is a chain that binds not just your thoughts but your very self, forcing you to fracture your mind to survive. As the candlelight casts wavering shadows on the imperial yellow walls, you brace for the next rule. The eunuch's voice, a faint murmur weaving through the shadowed corridor of the forbidden. During harvest celebrations, you must exude fertility and abundance. During the winter solstice, you represent the return of light and warmth. During times of war, you channel martial energy and strength. This means constantly reinventing yourself, becoming a living embodiment of You must study not only the emperor's personal preferences but also the cosmic and political significance of each season, transforming into an actress in an ever-changing theatrical production where the script shifts and the stakes are life and death. In the Qing dynasty's harem of 1720, this rule underscores the harem. Historical records, such as the Qing Shi Gao, describe the Kangxi emperor's court as deeply tied to the emperor's sexual appetite, seen as a reflection of cosmic vitality. During the Mid-Autumn Festival, historical accounts suggest such demands were relentless. A 1716 record notes a concubine demoted for failing to reflect the martial spirit. To deepen the emotional resonance, consider the fictional story of Ting, a concubine from a farming village in Shandong. Ting entered the harem with memories of tending rice fields, her hands calloused but her spirit tied to the season's rhythms. Now, one winter, tasked with embodying renewal, she faltered, her exhaustion betraying a moment of The cultural roots of this rule lie in the Qing dynasty's integration of Confucian and Taoist cosmology, where the emperor's actions were believed to influence heaven's favor. Festivals were not mere celebrations but rituals to ensure agricultural and political stability, as noted in the veritable records of the Qing. Historical parallels exist in other cultures. For instance, In ancient China's Zhou dynasty, court women played symbolic roles during harvest rituals, as recorded in the Book of Rites. In the Qing harem, failure to comply could lead to punishment, demotion, isolation, or reassignment to menial tasks. As you train for this rule, you practice in your chamber, studying festival calendars and rehearsing gestures that evoke abundance or renewal. You recall a childhood memory of dancing at a village harvest festival, your movements free, your laughter unscripted. Now, that freedom is a distant echo, replaced by a performance where the other concubines, you notice, carry this rule in their meticulous preparations, their conversations in the garden filled with talk of silks and dances, as if their lives depend on the next festival's success. Some, like Zhilam, the eunuch, watches The rule of seasonal performances is a chain that binds not just your body, but your identity, forcing you to become a symbol rather than a self. As the candlelight casts wavering shadows on the imperial yellow walls, you brace for the next rule, each one tightening the invisible. The eunuch's voice, a soft yet unyielding thread in the shadowed corridor of the Forbidden City, unveils the 12th rule of the imperial harem. Certain encounters with the emperor must be observed by eunuchs or senior concubines, not for his pleasure. This creates a terrifying panopticon of sexual surveillance. In the Qing dynasty's harem of 1720, this rule underscores the harem's role as a tightly controlled extension of imperial power. Historical records, such as the Qing Shi Gao, describe the presence of eunuchs and senior concubines as overseers in the emperor's chambers, their role not merely ceremonial but disciplinary. The Kangxi emperor, a ruler known for his meticulous oversight, relied on such. You observe this rule's toll in the concubine Chunhua, whose historical accounts suggest. To deepen the emotional resonance, consider the fictional story of Lin, a concubine from a scholarly family in Jiangsu. Lin entered the harem with dreams of writing poetry, her mind alive with verses inspired by moonlit nights. Now, under the watchful eyes of a senior concubine, she feels like prey. The next day, she was summoned by the head eunuch, who warned her of improper conduct, her status lowered to a minor rank. In private, Lin confides in you, her voice trembling, that the emperor, as the son of heaven, required a harem that operated as a flawless machine, every act reinforcing his divine mandate. Surveillance ensured compliance, aligning with Confucian principles of oversight and discipline, as noted in the Book of Rites. Historical parallels in the Qing harem, failure to comply could lead to harsh consequences, flogging, isolation, or banishment to the cold palaces. A 1719 record tells of a concubine. You recall a childhood memory of dancing freely under your family's watchful but loving gaze, a stark contrast to the cold scrutiny you now face. The effort is Some, like Chunhua, seem to have mastered it, their faces blank as jade, but their fleeting glances betray their fear. Others, newer like you, falter, their hands trembling as they brace for unseen judgment. The eunuch observes your practice, his gaze as beyond the corridor, the Forbidden City hum. The eunuch's voice, a quiet yet piercing thread in the shadowed corridor of the Forbidden City, unveils the 13th rule of the imperial harem. The emperor may bestow gifts upon his concubine. More insidiously, in the Qing dynasty, palace annals note that a concubine's status could rise or fall based on the emperor's largesse, with gifts like jade pendants or rare silks marking her as a favorite, often to the envy of others. This deliberate fostering of competition ensured that concubines remained divided, their loyalty directed solely to the emperor rather than to each other, reinforcing his absolute authority. You observe this rule's toll in the concubine Yuzhen, whose delicate wrist now bears a jade bracelet, a gift from the emperor. Historical account. To deepen the emotional resonance, consider the fictional story of Xu, a concubine from a merchant family in Guangzhou. Xu entered the harem with dreams of securing her family's future, her optimism as bright as the pearls she once sold. One evening, the emperor gifted her a silk fan, its intricate embroidery, a mark of favor. Overwhelmed, but the next day, her story echoes the silent struggles of countless women, their relationships shattered by the harem's calculated rewards. The cultural roots of this rule lie in the Qing dynasty's Confucian framework, where historical parallels exist in other imperial systems. For instance, in the Mughal harem, gifts were used to manipulate court dynamics, as recorded in 17th century chronicles. In the Qing harem, failure to navigate this rule could lead to punishment, demotion, isolation, or as you train for this rule, you practice in your chamber, rehearsing expressions of gratitude, your voice steady despite the dread of what a gift might mean. You recall a childhood memory of receiving a simple hairpin from your mother, its warmth untainted by obligation. Now, that innocence is a distant echo, replaced by a wariness of every offering. The other concubines, you notice. The eunuch watches your practice, his gaze unyielding, his silence a reminder of the stakes. Palace records suggest eunuchs were tasked with delivering and monitoring the impact of gifts, their reports shaping a concubine's fate. Beyond the corridor, the forbidden city hums with the clink of jade. The rule of gifts is a chain. The eunuch's voice, a somber whisper weaving through the shadowed corridor of the forbidden city, unveils the 14th rule of the imperial harem. Your family is essentially held hostage to ensure your compliance. The threat extends beyond their lives, encompassing a concubine who displeases the emperor risks not only her own survival, but the destruction of everyone she loves, her actions carrying the weight of her entire lineage. This rule, the eunuch explains, ensures that even in your most intimate moment, the harem's control stretches far beyond. The Qing court, rooted in Confucian principles of filial piety, viewed the family as an extension of the individual, making it a powerful tool for control. A concubine's misstep could lead to her family's demotion, loss of titles, or even execution, as noted in palace annals. You observe this rule's toll in the concubine Li Hua. Historical accounts confirm this pressure. A 1717 record describes a concubine who may entered the harem with pride, knowing her selection could secure her family's status. She wrote letters home, promising her younger sister a good marriage, her words filled with hope. But after a minor infraction, a misspoken word in the emperor's presence, she learned her father's trade privileges were revoked. The news arrived in a tear-stained. Now, May moves through the emperor as the ultimate A 1719 record tells of a concubine whose family was banished to the frontier after she was deemed disrespectful. Now, that warmth is a weight, your every action a safeguard for his honor. The other concubines, you notice, carry this rule in their guarded letters, their conversations in the garden avoiding mention of home. As if speaking, the eunuch watches your practice, his gaze stern, his silence a reminder of the stakes. Palace records suggest eunuchs were tasked with monitoring communications with families, their reports shaping a concubine's standing. Beyond the corridor, the forbidden city hums with the clink. The rule of familial hostages is a chain that binds not just your body but your heart, forcing you to perform for those you love. As the candlelight casts trembling shadows on the imperial yellow walls, you brace for the next rule, each one tightening the invisible bonds of this gilded cage. The eunuch's voice, a somber thread weaving through the shadowed corridor of the beauty rituals become increasingly desperate and dangerous lead-based In the Qing dynasty's harem of 1720, this rule reflects the brutal reality of a system that prized youth and beauty above all else. Historical records, such as the Qing palace annals note that concubines employed elaborate regimens, cosmetics, hair treatments, and restrictive diets to maintain their allure, often at great personal cost. The pressure to remain desirable was not just personal but political, as a concubine's status affected her family's standing, making aging a public as well as private tragedy. You observe this rule's toll in the concubine. In the emperor's chambers, she applies her makeup with meticulous care, her skin pale from lead-based powders, her movements graceful but strained. In the concubine's quarters, you've seen her mentor younger girls, her voice steady as she teaches them dances, yet her hands tremble when she adjusts her hair, aware historical accounts confirm this struggle. A 1718 record describes Shu entered the harem at 16, her beauty likened to spring blossoms, her laughter a melody that charmed the court. Now, at 28, she feels time's relentless march. She spends hours applying rice powder mixed with lead, her skin burning but her face flawless, and restricts her meals to broth, her frame thinning to preserve a youthful silhouette. One night, tasked with mentoring a new concubine, Shu saw her. The cultural roots of this rule lie in the Qing dynasty's Confucian and aesthetic ideals, where youth symbolized vitality and divine favor. The emperor, as the son of heaven, was surrounded by symbols of renewal, and aging concubines disrupted this narrative. As noted in the Qing harem, failure to maintain appeal could lead to demotion, isolation, or reassignment to menial tasks. A 1716 record tells of a concubine exiled to the cold palaces for allowing age to diminish. You recall a childhood memory of others, newer like you, flinch at their reflections, fearing the day they'll mentor their replacements. The eunuch watches your practice, his gaze clinical, his silence a reminder. The rule of aging is the eunuch's voice, a faint yet resolute whisper in the shadowed corridor of the Forbidden City, unveils the 16th rule of the imperial harem. When the emperor dies, you face a choice that is no choice at all: volunteer to be buried with. From the moment you enter the harem, you must cultivate. In the Qing dynasty's harem of 1720, this rule reflects the ultimate cost of serving the Kangxi emperor. Historical records, such as the Qing Shi Gao, document the practice of human sacrifice in earlier dynasties, though by the Qing, it was less common for concubines to be buried alive. This practice reinforced the emperor's divine In the concubine's quarters, you've seen her write letters to her family, her brush steady but her eyes distant, as if already rehearsing her farewell. She speaks of duty, but her voice trembles when mentioning her younger brother, whose future depends on. Modern sociology might tasked with writing a letter to her parents. She describes her choice to die or live as a shadow haunts her, a mirror to the countless women bound by this rule's cruel calculus. The cultural roots of this rule lie in the Qing dynasty's Confucian and shamanistic traditions, where death was a continuation of duty. The emperor, as the son of heaven, was believed to require attendance in the afterlife. Historical parallels exist in other dynasties. As you train for this rule, you practice in your chamber, composing letters of devotion you may never send, each word a step toward accepting your own end. You recall a childhood memory of your mother's lullabies, promising a long life filled with love. The other concubines, you notice, carry this rule in their quiet moments, their conversations in the garden avoiding talk of the future, as if it's already forfeit. Some, like Rong, seem resigned, their letters polished, but their eyes betray their fear. Others, newer palace record, as the candlelight casts trembling shadows on the imperial yellow walls, you brace for the next rule, each one tightening the invisible bonds of this gilded cage. The eunuch's voice, a hushed yet relentless murmur in the shadowed. This resistance takes subtle form. This rule reveals the incredible strength and ingenuity of those who survive, weaving a thread of defiance through the oppressive tapestry of the Qing court. In the Qing dynasty's harem of 1720, resistance was both rare and perilous, yet historical records, such as the palace annals, note instances of secret communications, coded poems, hidden notes used to maintain bonds among women, as well as rare cases of escape or defiance, swiftly punished to deter others. These acts were not just personal but collective, a quiet rebellion against. You observe this rule's quiet power in the concubine Jalan. Historical accounts confirm such acts. A 1717 record describes a group of concubines who developed a coded language of fan movements to deepen the emotional resonance. The attempt failed, betrayed by a fearful ally, and Ting was flogged, her back scarred but her resolve unbroken. In private, she confides in you, her voice steady, that each stitch she sews is a rebellion, a reminder that she is more than a vessel. Her story echoes the silent courage of countless women, their defiance a spark in the harem's darkness. The cultural roots of this rule lie in the Qing dynasty's tension between Confucian ideals demanded submission, but the human spirit, as noted in the veritable records of the Qing, found ways to resist, often through art or ritual. Historical parallels exist in other oppressive systems. For instance, in the Ottoman harem, concubines used poetry to encode dissent, as recorded in 17th century chronicle. A 1700. Now, that bond fuels your quiet rebellion, your fingers tracing secret symbols in the dust. The other concubines, you notice, carry this rule in their subtle gestures, a shared glance, a coded phrase, their conversations in the garden laced with hidden meanings. Some, like Jilan, seem to master it, their defiance woven into their daily routines, but their cautious glances. The eunuch watches your practice, his gaze unreadable, perhaps sensing your defiance but choosing silence. The rule of resistance is a chain that binds you to your humanity, a fragile thread of defiance in a world designed to break you. As the candlelight casts trembling shadows on the imperial yellow walls, you brace for the next rule, each one tightening the invisible bonds of this gilded cage. The eunuch's voice, a somber whisper threading through the shadowed corridor of the Forbidden City, unveils the 18th rule of the Imperial Harem. You are forbidden from feeling genuine affection for the Emperor, yet equally forbidden from not feeling it. You must simulate love so perfectly that it appears indistinguishable from the real thing, while maintaining enough emotional distance to survive the inevitable rejection. This creates a psychological tightrope, where falling into genuine love risks your destruction, and complete detachment risks your sanity. The rare women who find a balance, the eunuch warns, often pay for this skill with their mental stability, becoming performers so accomplished. In the Qing dynasty's harem of 1,720, palace annals note that concubines were trained to perform devotion through gestures, words, and expressions while keeping their true feelings buried. Failure to navigate this paradox could lead to punishment, as genuine emotion was deemed a lapse in duty, while coldness risked disfavor. The emperor, you observe this rule's toll in the concubine usion. Historical accounts suggest such emotional conflict was common. A 1,718 record describes a concubine demoted for excessive attachment, her tears interpreted as a challenge to the emperor's control. Modern psychology might frame this as emotional dissociation. Hui entered the harem with a heart open to beauty, her childhood filled with tales of love from her grandmother's stories. Tasked with simulating devotion, she crafted a persona of adoration, her eyes softening. In private, Hui confides in you, her voice trembling, that she fears losing herself entirely, her emotions a tangled web of performance. The emperor, as the embodiment of divine order, required devotion that served his authority, not human connection, as noted in the veritable records of the Qing. Historical parallels exist in other imperial systems. For instance, a 1,716 record tells of a concubine banished to the cold palaces. The effort is exhausting, your emotions a battlefield of pretense and suppression. The other concubines, you notice, carry this rule in their guarded expressions, their conversations in the garden carefully devoid of personal sentiment, as if love is a dangerous secret. Some, like Yuzhen, seem to master the performance. The eunuch watches your practice, his gaze piercing, his silence a reminder of the stakes. Palace records suggest eunuchs were tasked with monitoring emotional displays, their reports shaping a concubine's fate. Beyond the corridor, as the candlelight casts trembling shadows on the imperial yellow walls, you brace. The 19th rule declares that upon the emperor's death, you become a danger. The 20th rule demands that you forget everything. You stand now, older, wiser, and infinitely more tired. Concubines, privy to intimate details of the old regime, were seen as liabilities. The demand to forget was a psychological necessity, ensuring survivors posed no challenge to the new order, yet it left them haunted, as noted in accounts of concubines who suffered lifelong trauma, their silence a testament to suppressed pain. You observe in the concubine's quarters, she moves with a quiet grace, mentoring younger girls, yet her hands tremble when she speaks of the past, as if the act of forgetting is a wound that never heals. Historical accounts confirm this burden. A 1,719 record describes a concubine who, after the emperor's death, was sent to a temple, her letters home filled with cryptic references to nightmares. Modern psychology might recognize. Ordered to prepare for a temple life, she writes poetry of farewell, her verses praising the emperor but hiding her grief for a life unlived. One night, she confides in you, her voice breaking, that she dreams of her childhood home, yet wakes to panic, unable to trust her own heart. As she prepares to teach a new concubine the harem, her story echoes the silent struggles. Historical parallels exist in other dynasties. For instance, in the Ming dynasty, consorts were often sent to convents or executed, as recorded in the Ming Shi. In the Qing harem, the expectation to forget ensured compliance, but it left lasting trauma, with some women recorded as unable to form new bonds. A 1,000. As you stand in the corridor, some, like Rong, seem resigned, but their trembling hands betray their scars. You too feel the memories surface, nights of fear, moments of defiance, yet you must bury them to teach the next girl. The eunuch, long dead, is a shadow in your. Beyond the corridor, the Forbidden City hums with the clink. As the candlelight casts trembling shadows on the imperial yellow walls, you speak to the new girl, your voice heavy with centuries, weaving the invisible chains that will bind her, as the distant trickle of fountains echoes the unending cycle of the harem. Completed.